My name is Eller, and at 28 years old, I believed I had finally broken free from the quiet emotional servitude that shaped me childhood after a decade of building a life dictated by my own rules. I made my own careless decision. I opened the family group chat. The message waiting there wasn't a hello. It wasn't a memory or a holiday plan. It was an invoice, $6,000. When I asked what it was for, my sister Ashley responded with 2 words, "You owe us." I stared at the screen, the stark white glow of the invoice floating in the stillness of my condo. 10:51 p.m. The city outside my windows hummed with distant traffic. But inside, there was only silence. The request wasn't just financial. It was a demand, a claim laid against a future I had spent years constructing brick by deliberate, brick by people rooted in a past I had clawed my way out of. To full years of peace. Fractured by a single entitled message. I didn't cry. I didn't feel the sharp flare of anger rising in my chest. What surfaced instead was something colder, cleaner, almost surgical. Clarity. For years, I had been the silent stakeholder in their version of family. I had bankrolled their emotional deficits and logistical chaos with my time, my energy, and my bank account. My empathy had functioned like an unlimited credit line they never hesitated to max out. Tonight, that account was closing. I walked into my home office and lifted my laptop from sleep mode. The blue-white light illuminated my face, but I felt detached, almost clinical. My fingers hovered for only a moment before moving with a new kind of certainty. I opened a blank spreadsheet. The cursor blinked in cell A1. In the first column, I typed date. In the second, service render. In the third, market value. My memory, once something that pulsed quietly with hurt, now felt like an organized archive, a ledger waiting to be itemized. I began August, 4 years ago, emergency babysitting, so Ashley could attend a fashion expo, 72 hours straight. I entered it at a professional nanny rate, $25 per hour, $1,800. Christmas, 3 years ago, I had served as unpaid inventory manager and shipping clerk during Ashley's boutique holiday rush, 40 hours minimum. A fulfillment specialist earns no less than $20 an hour, $800. The entries multiplied, driving mom to 5 different stores to pick out Ashley's curtains. I categorized it under private chauffeur services, 5 hours at $50 per hour, $250. The $2,000 I loaned Ashley for her first website forgotten the moment the launch went live. The $800 I covered to repair Dad's car 2 winters ago when he couldn't manage it right now. Plane tickets purchased for family emergencies that turned out to be scheduling inconveniences. Holiday dinners I funded and prepared that were consumed without acknowledgement. Graduation gifts, birthday gifts, every late-night phone call where I played therapist, strategist, crisis manager. I assigned conservative rates. This wasn't retaliation. It was reconciliation of numbers. At 11:58 p.m., I pressed the sum function. The total appeared at the bottom of the sheet, $14,250. I saved the file as ledger_clark_family_outstanding.pdf. Then I returned to the group chat. Ashley's message still sat there, heavy and expectant. I tapped the paperclip icon and attached the file. Then I typed, "Regarding your invoice for $6,000. Please review the attached statement outlining your outstanding balance with me. Once the significantly larger balance is resolved in full, I would be open to discussing the possibility of extending additional credit. Terms and conditions to be determined." I pressed send at 12:03 a.m. Immediately, my phone erupted, vibrating violently against the marble countertop. Ashley, Mom, then Dad, who rarely engaged in anything digital. Notifications flooded the screen. What is this? Is this supposed to be funny? Call me right now. I didn't respond. I silenced the phone, poured myself a glass of water, and noticed how steady my hand was. I searched for guilt, for regret, for the faint tremor of doubt. There was nothing but precision. They weren't stunned by their behavior. They were stunned I had documented it. This wasn't a breakdown. It was accounting. And for the first time in my life, I stood on the correct side of the ledger. The next morning, I woke to the persistent tremor of my muted phone on the nightstand. To 7 missed calls, 43 unread messages. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, striping the hardwood floor in gold. The brightness felt almost mocking compared to the digital storm waiting inches away. I didn't check the messages. I didn't need to. I knew their script by memory, shock dissolving into outrage. Outrage transforming into accusations of selfishness. Instead, I brewed coffee. The familiar aroma grounded me in the present and the life I had built for myself through years of disciplined solitude. As the coffee dripped, the memories behind last night's spreadsheet resurfaced, not as open wounds, but as exhibits. 2 years ago, my parents' kitchen, the smell of roast chicken and cherry pie thick in the air. I had prepared both dishes that morning. I got a promotion, I announced evenly, senior clinical specialist. They're transferring me to the Raleigh office. No. One looked up. The baseball game droned from the television. Ashley was mid-live stream, enthusiastically pitching products to her followers. Mom hurried down the hallway. One of the kids. My announcement dissolved into ambient noise. Minutes later, Ashley declared she'd made $2,000 in one sales day. The room erupted with applause and admiration. My 15% raise and relocation bonus passed without comment. That was the pattern. I existed as background infrastructure, visible only when a function was required. The unpaid caterer, the default babysitter, the emergency financial reserve. I sipped my coffee, warmth spread through me, contrasting sharply with the cool resolve embedded in my chest. On my last birthday, none of them called. When I phoned Mom that evening, her voice was hurried. "Oh, honey, I meant to call. Ashley's dealing with another crisis at the boutique. I've been tied up all day." A crisis? There was always one. Ashley's business, Ashley's children, Ashley's turbulence. She was the gravitational center of their universe. I orbited at a distance, summoned only when my pole could solve a problem. Last night wasn't an isolated confrontation. It was the cumulative result of years of unbalanced exchanges where I was the sole contributor. The ledger wasn't vengeance. It was evidence, proof that my time, my labor, and my money held value even if they had never acknowledged it. For once, I wasn't requesting recognition. I was issuing an invoice. The flood of calls and messages continued for 2 days. When anger didn't elicit a response, they recalibrated. On the third morning, my phone rang again. Mom. This time, I answered, placing the call on speaker while I watered my plants. "Hello, thank God." She breathed. "I've been so worried." Her voice trembled with the familiar orchestration of guilt. "I'm fine, Mom," I replied evenly. "Fine? How can you be fine? Your sister is a wreck. She hasn't slept. Do you have any idea what you've done to her?" I trimmed her dead leaf from my monster. I sent here a statement of services rendered. It's a standard business practice. Business, this, is family. The tears were gone now, replaced by a sharp-wounded edge. After everything we've done for you, we raised you, we fed you, we gave you a home. Yes, you did the bare minimum required of parents. I'm grateful for that, I say calmly. But that doesn't entitle you to a lifetime of my indentured servitude. There was a sharp intake-off breath on the other end. Indentured. Eller, who has been putting these ideas in your head? Is it that new life you have? You've changed. You've become so cold, so selfish. I haven't become as selfish. I corrected her gently. I've just stopped being selfless to my own detriment. There's a difference. Your sister needs you, she pleaded, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. The boutique failed. Eller, she's in a terrible amount of debt. We were just hoping with your new job and that big promotion, you could help her, help us. And there it was, the truth wrapped in a blanket of emotional blackmail. Miss Ixis wasn't a cause for their celebration. It was a resource for thyroid exploitation. My finances are my own, Mom, as Ashley's are her own. I said, my voice, leaving no room for negotiation. I've attached my invoice. If she'd like to discuss a payment plan for her outstanding balance of $14,250, she can contact me via email. You can't be serious, she whispered, her tone laced with disbelief. I've never been more serious in my life, I replied. Now, if that's all, I have a meeting to prepare for. I hung up before she could respond, my heart beating a steady rhythmic drum. The guilt I had expected to feel, the old familiar phantom, was absent. In its place was a profound, unshakable sense of rightness. They had escalated with emotion. Now it was my turn to escalate with something they would understand, even better, formality. The phone call with my mother was a turning point. It proved they would never see my boundaries as valid. They would only see them as obstacles to be overcome. With more manipulation, emotional appeals had failed, so they would likely try something else. I had to get ahead of it. That afternoon, I spent an hour on the phone with a lawyer specializing in family law and harassment. I explained the situation with the same clinical detachment I'd used to build my spreadsheet. I recounted the years of financial and emotional demands, the recent $6,000 invoice, and the subsequent campaign off calls and messages. It sounds like you need to establish a clear and legally defensible boundary, the lawyer, a woman named Miss Albright, said, her voice crisp and professional. A strongly worded cease and desist letter is the appropriate first step. It will put them in formal notice that any further contact outside of written correspond regarding the settlement of their debt to you will be considered harassment. That's exactly what I want, I said. Miss Albright drafted the letter that same day. It was a masterpiece of cold legal prose. I'd referenced specific dates and times of their unwanted contact. It outlined my legal right to peace and privacy. It stated in no uncertain terms that direct communication by phone, text, or in-person visits was to stop immediately. All future correspondence was to be directed to her office. I read the draft and a sense of profound relief washed over me. This document was the more I'd never had. It took my personal note and transformed it into a legal barricade. I had her send it via certified mail to my parents' house and to Ashley's address. The silence that followed was immediate and absolute. For a full week, my phone didn't ring. No notifications lit up my screen. The quiet was so complete, it was almost jarring. For a moment, I allowed myself to hope that it was over, that the stark finality of a legal document had finally gotten the message through their thick wall of entitlement. I should have known better. They weren't retreating. They were just regrouping for a more desperate, more dangerous assault. The quiet lasted 9 days. On the 10th day, I was in a meeting at work when my phone vibrated with an alert from my credit monitoring service. I glanced down, expecting it to be a routine score update. The text on the screen made my blood run cold. Fraud alert. A credit card application with a $20,000 limit was submitted in your name with capital 1. If this was not you, please contact us immediately. My breath caught in my chest. It took a moment for my brain to process the information. I excused myself from the meeting, my hand shaking slightly as I stepped into the hallway and dialed the number. The automated system confirmed the details. An online application submitted 20 minutes ago using my name, my social security number, and my date of birth. The only piece of information that was mine was the mailing address. It was Ashley's. The clarity I had felt before returned. But this time it was razor sharp, honed to a lethal point. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. This wasn't emotional blackmail. This was a felony. My sister, in her desperation, had committed identity theft. All the years of her taking my time, my energy, my money, my clothes from my closet when we were teenagers, had led to this. She had finally decided to take my name, my credit, my entire financial identity. She believed she was entitled to it just like she was entitled to everything else. The bank representative on the phone was asking if I wanted to file a police report. Yes, I said, my voice low and steady. Yes, I do. But not just yet. First, I need to make a phone call. The anger wasn't hot and explosive. It was glacial. It was the kind of anger that doesn't scream. that methodically and completely destroys. They had crossed a line from which there was no return. They thought I was a resource. They were about to find out I was a reckoning. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I went them and opened my laptop. I took screenshots of the fraud alert and that confirmation email from the bank. I saved the audio recording of my call with the fraud department. I gathered my evidence like a prosecutor building an airtight case. Then I initiated a conference call to my mother, my father, and Ashley. It took them a moment to realize they were all on the same line. "What is this, Eller?" my mother asked, her voice wary. "I'm glad I got you all at once. It saves me the trouble of repeating myself." I began, my tone as flat and sterile as a hospital corridor. "At 217 this afternoon, someone applied for a Capital One credit card with a $20,000 limit using my name, my social security number, and my date of birth. The application listed the primary mailing address as 123 Oak Street. Silence. I let it stretch thick and suffocating. I knew that was Ashley's address. They knew it too. "Ashley," I said, my voice dropping, "did you have something you wanted to tell me?" A choked sob came from her end of that line. I didn't know what else to do. "We're desperate, Ella. I was going to pay it back. You committed multiple felonies," I stated, cutting through her pathetic excuse. "Identity theft, credit card fraud. You were willing to ruin my financial future to solve your temporary problem. Eller, sweetheart." My father finally spoke, his voice strained. "She's your sister. She made a mistake." "This wasn't a mistake," I snapped, the ice in me voice cracking just enough to show fury beneath. "It was a calculated decision, and it has consequences." I paused, letting the weight of my words land. "So, here is what is going to happen. I am presenting you with two options. You have 1 minute to decide which one you will take." "Options?" my mother whispered. "Option A," I said, "is that the three of you will be at my lawyer's office tomorrow morning. At 900 a.m. you will sign a legally binding document, a familial disassociation agent. It will state that you will never again contact me, my place of employment, or any of my friends by any means, for any reason. It will also acknowledge your $14,000 debt to me, which I will agree to forgive in exchange for your permanent and total absence from my life. If you choose this option, I will not press charges." I let that sink in. "And option B," Dada's Scottish voice, barely audible. "Option B is I hang up this phone call the Raleigh Police Department and hand over my file of evidence. A warrant will be issued for Ashley's arrest. She will face years in prison, and I will do everything in my power to ensure she is prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. You have 50 seconds left to choose." The other end off the line was a chaotic mix of panicked whispers and sobs. They had spent my entire life holding all the power, leveraging my love and sense of duty against me. But in one desperate criminal act, they had handed me all records. They were no longer my familiar manning help. They were perpetrators begging for mercy from their victim. "We'll be there," my father said, his voice heavy with defeat. "We'll sign the papers." I didn't say goodbye. I didn't say another word. I just ended the call. The next morning, they were at Miss Albright's office at 8:45. They looked smaller, diminished under fluorescent lights of the conference room. My mother's eyes were red-rimmed. My father's face was a gray mask of resignation, and Ashley stared at the polished surface of the table, unable to meet my gaze. I didn't speak to them. I let Miss Albright handle everything. She explained the terms of the agreement with brutal clarity. They would have no claim on me, and I would have no claim in them. We were in the eyes of the law strangers. They signed their hands, trembling slightly. My father pushed the documents across the table, and for the first time in my life, I saw him not as a father, but as a defeated man who had enabled his family's toxicity for far too long. When it was done, they left without a word. I watched them go from the window. 3 people walking away from a life they had systematically tried to drain. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel sadness. I felt nothing but quiet, clean emptiness of a space that has finally been clear of clutter months. have passed, the silence that followed is no longer jarring. It's peaceful. It's the sound of my life uninterrupted. My phone no longer feels like a potential landmine. My morning sorry mine. My money is mine. My future is mine. The hole they left in my life was not a wound. It was a space that has since been filled with genuine friendships, a loving relationship, and simple, profound joy of being the sole author of my own story. Sometimes I think about the choice I made. They pushed me to a point where my only options were to either be consumed or to cut the cord. Completely, I chose to save myself. If you were me, if your family ignored you for years, but came back and leave for money, what would you do? Help them out of family loyalty. Refuse, but stay in touch. Z. Cut them off completely to protect your peace. Comment your choice below. Because sometimes, the hardest thing isn't forgiving them. It's finally stopping yourself from waiting for them to be part of my life.